you think that this is one of the most exciting markets. What kind of money are you allocating to India? Has that gone up significantly over the last 12 months? Are you looking at revising it downwards, given the fact that we've actually seen the markets correct quite sharply recently? What are you doing as far as your overall allocation is concerned?
So going into the election, I was mega bullish. So I had about 35% of my fund, 30% I think of my fund, which went to 42% because India rallied so much.
Yeah.
So since then, as the market has come off and been sort of slowly reducing the allocation, last count it was at 20% on the way to 15. But I think this is it. I think
so that's a significant come down because you were at almost 36.5% from what I remember. Correct. So you've come down to about 20% now.
15, yeah.
15.
So as I said, it's the small mid-cap sector in India is one of the most exciting in the world, and I would say that is where you'll make all your money. One of the easiest places to make money if you find the right stocks. Right now, the FII money is in retreat. The domestic money has slowed down. Domestic inflows have slowed down. So you will get to buy all these quality stocks at very good prices, and that's what I would do. So next few months, I think one should be buying all these Indian small caps.
Okay, what would it take for you to up your India exposure? What are the kind of triggers that you're watching out for, perhaps from the government, perhaps in terms of reforms? What is it that you're going to be watching out for in India?
I think the first thing is the external environment, right? I don't think oil is a risk, but the Fed is a risk. And the Fed raising rates is not so bad for India because it's only 25 basis points. The problem is the dollar might go up, screaming higher. And if the rupee comes under pressure, liquidity comes under pressure in India, so that provides one negative backdrop. So I would wait until this noise settles down.
Okay.
And my trigger would be when the yield curve in the US starts flattening. Right now it's steepening in anticipation of the Fed going up.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the Fed is making a mistake. Once it does, then the yield curve will flatten. So that would be one trigger. The dollar turning over would be correlated. It would be a coincident indicator. As far as India is concerned, you need to see some more signs of economic recovery. I think we're bumbling along at the bottom, but give it a few months. I would say by September, October, we have to see a recovery start. And maybe that's when the Chinese...
But do you see an earnings recovery as well? Because, we've had a very, very bad quarter. The hope is that we are probably going to see at least a relatively better quarter in comparison to the one gone by. Do you see that being reflected in earnings as well?
No, I think the valuations are too high. Right? If you're looking at stocks which are going to depend on the Indian recovery, I mean, that's not an easy one. So that's why all the companies I mentioned to you, these are all more secular stories, rather than India recovery specific.
Are you looking at some of these internet related stories? I mean, they're not listed at this point in time, the Flipkarts of the world, the Snapdeals of the world. These are, startup companies that have been around for about 5 to 10 years now. Are you looking at any of those?
Well, I can only buy listed companies.
I know, but I'm saying from a potential perspective.
Absolutely. But it's really...
Hopefully they will list in a couple of years.
Oh, they will list, for sure.
Yeah.
They need capital. There's no doubt about it. But I think you have to be very careful about all these business models. Right now, there's a huge amount of money going into India thinking it's the next China internet story. But I think the challenges are much bigger in India. So I'd rather go with companies which are established business models. So Just Dial is a great example. InfoEdge, another great example.
Would you buy into Just Dial and InfoEdge at these levels?
Oh yeah, Just Dial definitely.
Yeah?
Definitely. Just Dial is a great story. You've got they really understand what makes the business tick. It's a search business in India. If you look at all the search companies around the world, Google in the US, or rather Google in the English-speaking world, Yandex in Russia, Naver in Korea, Yahoo Japan in Japan, they all have been phenomenal stories because when you go to the internet, what do? You're basically searching for something. And what makes Just Dial so great is they have a database. And as you know, there's no information available about India in English anywhere, right? So even Google can't compete against Just Dial. So they have to parlay that huge advantage and brand image into a monetization. Search Plus, let's see how it works out. Maybe it needs a lot more work, but that is a very, very defensible brand and business model.
Okay, so over the next few years, 5 of the most exciting small and mid-cap companies that you would bet your money on?
So Just Dial definitely is one of them. So let's pick one from each sector, right? I think that's probably the better way to do it. So in the financials, I would go with, should take your pick between DCB Bank, Bajaj Finance.
And City Union, you mentioned.
And City Union Bank. Although City Union is a bit smaller, but
So it
you
would be
get the
between
gist.
DCB and Bajaj Finance?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or one of those kind of banks.
Okay.
Wakrangi actually might be a fit. I mean, I'm not sure what the classification is, but if eventually Wakrangi should be looked at as a financial stock. So that is a play on Mr. Modi's financial deepening, and if they get the business model right, that is one potential winner.
Okay.
On the infrastructure side, I think NBCC is the easiest way to play this sector. That is 20% growth till the next several years.
Okay.
Then in the let's see, so we have dealt with internet, we have dealt with financials, we have dealt with infrastructure. Consumers, I love Page, but that valuation is nosebleed.
Huh.
I think Page Industries is the most exciting consumer discretionary stock I find anywhere in the world.
Okay.
They have managed to take their model and done enormous, spin-offs, shall we say. They've taken the essential brand and they have made it. I think an analyst called it a Asian Paints model of that business. So I think that's a phenomenal company. Valuation is expensive, so that's where I would put in your price for 20% below, and I think it will get filled, and that's a great story. It's very expensive, but I don't think it's going to come down.
Okay.
So consumer discretionary would be there, and what else? So other than that, I think the internet will throw up more business models.
But you're not looking at the traditional Indian IT, mid-cap IT companies at
No.
all? That story is done.
It's not done.
I mean, the Mindtrees of the world is not something that you would consider, look at, doesn't look exciting.
It's not an India, it's not a Bharat story.
Okay.
It's an India story.
Okay.
Right? It's the stock that foreign investors love to own because they can see these guys have, contracts with, oh my God, this guy at Xerox in the US, they know Xerox, so they think they can understand eClerks or Mindtree or whatever it is. But the reality is that the Indian story is independent of the global economy.
Where do you see the markets in 2015?
Very hard to. I mean, it's never easy picking the bottom. But I'll give you the factors to look at. I think the first factor you look at is you see the next earnings results come out. The sell-side analysts say, oh my God, these earnings estimates we have are too high. They knock it down by 20%. The market reacts to that. You have foreigners saying, that's it, I'm giving up, I never made money in India. And that's when you buy. And that could be in 2 months' time, it could be, well, actually June is going to end, so, July, August, and by September, I think you should see the dust settle. So I'm guessing September because, by that time, the Fed will finally have delivered their own demise. The credibility of the Fed will be an issue. Yeah. And so yield curve in the US flattens, money goes back into emerging markets. Small caps in India are the biggest beneficiaries of these things.
Foreign investors continue to be as excited about India, or is sort of the sheen wearing off, patience running a little thin? That's the sense that we pick up on.
So I think the foreign investor is a very interesting creature, right? I mean, they try to understand India, but for 9 out of 10 of them, it's beyond them. They go to India, they see the airports, they see the roads, they see the Babu files, and they look at the man on the street, they look at cows running around. They have no idea how the hell do I make sense of this. So what do? They go into their comfort zone, they buy the IT stocks. Oh, these guys talk my language, they're doing business with my companies, and that's their comfort zone. And if you look at some of the biggest emerging markets funds here in the US, and they're like the same, it's like a photocopy of each holding. They all have the same stock. Yeah. So what does that mean? Well, when there's outflows, and these guys have to sell, they'll end up selling the same thing. So Nestle, what happened to Nestle in India is a very good example of what could happen. So foreign investors are a great thing. They're going to sell at the bottom and buy at the top.
Well, Rohit, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. Thank you very much for joining us here on the special edition of the New Yorkers. We wish you the very best of luck, and we do hope that the stocks that you've talked to us about will see the kind of run that you expect and anticipate. But thanks very much for your time.
My pleasure.
Well, on that note, it's time for us to wrap up this edition of the New Yorkers. We'll see you again. From all of us here, goodbye, and many thanks for watching.